Hi everyone, what's up? In the last video we implemented the mouse double click method here in our chess move listener class. This is responsible for selecting a square once we double click on it. So selecting a piece, I should say. So for example, when I double click this d2 pawn, this actually has selected this piece, but we are not currently seeing it on our graphical user interface. So today we are going to add this functionality to highlight the legal moves that the selected piece has. So actually we partially implemented that also here inside this set focus method in our chessboard part. So after we have painted the background colors of the squares regularly, we are checking the legal squares afterwards and updating the background color with the blue color. But the problem is that this method never gets called once we double click, after we double click. So we have to make sure that after this method is terminated, this set focus method gets called immediately. So one way to ensure that is to call the set focus method here in the mouse up method. This makes sense because not only this will trigger after the mouse double click method, but it will also trigger after the mouse down or a single click method. So as I told you earlier, after both of those events, so whether if you double click or single click, immediately a mouse up event triggers. So this will become handy that we call the set focus methods inside this mouse up method, because we will want to update the graphical user interface after this mouse down event is handled as well. So I'm going to explain that later in a different video, but let's focus on today's topic now. So let me add a single line here, part refresher refresh. So I know we don't have a part refresher class yet, but we're going to create it in a moment. The responsibility of this class will be to refresh or call the set focus methods of all our parts. So we have only one part at the moment, which is this part, chessboard part, but we're going to add two more parts. Let me show you what I mean. So we are going to add graveyard parts, one for each player. So for example, in this side we are going to display the captured pieces of the white player, and in the right side we're going to display the captured pieces of the black player. So we will have a total of 3 parts, and the chess or the part refresher method will call the set focus methods of all those parts, so that the graphical user interface is up to date with our program. So let's go ahead and create a new class inside our parts package called part refresher, and we're going to add an instance of our chessboard part here so that we can access its set focus method. So private static chessboard part. Alright, and we'll add our we'll add our refresh method here. So by the way, the reason that this is a static reference is that this will be an this will be a singleton instance. So there will only be a single instance of this class, which is actually the case because once we launch our application, only one instance of this chessboard part is created by the framework, which is the one we see in our graphical user interface. So moving on, public static void refresh, and we're going to simply call the setFocus method of the chessboard part. That's it. So once we add our graveyard parts, we'll call the setFocus methods of those as well. But for now, this is the only thing we have to do. And also we have to add another method to register the singleton instance to the part refresher. So the part refresher has to somehow know about the object that is created by the application. So public static void set chessboard parts chessboard part. Alright, so part refresher chessboard part is equal to chessboard part. Alright, so where will we call this method? So we are going to call this inside our chessboard part because after this is created and the post construct method is terminated, we have to register our object to the chessboard part. So here is a good place to call this method because not only our object is fully created, but also the widgets are also created, so that setFocus method is safe to call, as we did here actually. So part refresher set chessboard part this. Okay, so let me save that, and okay, let's import the part refresher. And I guess our pieces or our squares should be highlighted when we select a piece. So for example, let's double click this. Alright, so the wrong squares are highlighted actually. So the expected behavior was that these two, the D3 and D4 should be highlighted, but let's debug our program to see what's actually causing this error. So for example, let me put a breakpoint here after the double click event is triggered. Let's debug our program and see what happens. Alright, I'm double clicking the D2 cell here. Alright, so the piece is white pawn. Alright, so let's step into this compute legal moves method. So let's look at the square if it's the right one. So row 1 and column 3, let's check it. Row 0, 1, alright, and column 0, 1, 2, 3. Alright, so this is the correct square. There are no errors here. Actually, let me step once again. So column 2, row 3. Actually, I'm going to add a toString method very quickly so that debugging is easier. It will just take a moment, so let me open up the square class. Alright, let's add a toString method. Override public string toString. So we are going to display the letter of the column and the number of the square, for example D2. So in order to do that, return string format. So we're going to display two strings. The first one is the column. So we have to display this as a character. Add the column to the A character. And the second one is add row, or add 1 to the row. So I think this makes sense. Let's run our application in the debug mode once again. So I'm selecting the same square D2 and step into the compute legal moves method, and let's check. So this should be A or D actually. Why does it display a number? Let me check once again. How about we put this into a parentheses. Let's try it again. So it was treating this column as a number, I guess. So double click. Alright, so D2 is correct, and the target square is C4. Let's look at that. So C4 is here, but it should have printed D3, because here we are accessing the adjacent square. As you see, horizontal, vertical. Vertical 1 means the square just in front of it. So the front square is D3 here, but it's printing C4. So let's debug this get adjacent square method. So let me run once again and double click D2. Actually put this breakpoint here. So I'm stepping into this adjacent square method. So get square, horizontal plus column, vertical plus row. So this makes sense. What about this method? So it takes in the row and the column, but we are giving the column and then row. So we have to swap the order of the arguments. We have to pass the row in index first and the column second. So let me quickly swap those. Alright, actually I guess this will be fixed now, but let me try again. Here it goes. Alright, so that was a very tiny mistake on my part. So I messed up the ordering of the arguments here inside this get adjacent square method. So actually let's try this. Alright, this is correct, and let's try finally the knight, and the knight is also correct. So another issue, as you see, is they are not going away. So when I select another piece, for example when I select H2, these should be revert back to normal, and only these two should be highlighted. So let's also take care of that. So let's go to our move listener. So in the beginning of this method we have to refresh, we have to refresh the legal squares. So how can we do that? Let's add a private method here. private void reset legal squares, and inside of nested for loop, so int row 0 board length, and so do we have the chess room? Oh, we don't have the, we have to obtain a reference to the chess room so that we can access the board object. So how can we do that? Let's think for a moment. So we can open the reference to the outside world from the chessboard part here. So let's also make that static, since there will be only one chess room instance, and let's add a public static chess room get chess room turn chess room. Right, so using this method we can access the chess room inside the chessboard part. So we already have alright, so we can get the chess room like this, chessboard part get chess room. Alright, and then once we have the chess room, we'll get the board object, and we are going to get the square, I guess. Alright, so row and column. And then we have to, alright, we have to set legal false. So in this long line we are accessing the chess room and then the chessboard inside the chess room and each square, and we are setting the legal state to false, and we are going to call this method in the beginning of the mouse double click method. So reset. So let's try again. So these are highlighted, and when I double click this, right, these go away and these get highlighted. As you see, this is the desired behavior. And before wrapping this up, I know this has been a long video, but I want to change the color a bit because this is too dark in my opinion. Let's make it a lighter blue. So where we are setting the blue here. Instead of the standard blue, let's make our custom blue. So color light blue is equal to new color display get default, and we have to give the RGB values here, but I don't have a single clue which numbers to give, so let's color picker. Let's take a look. So for example, I think this is a good color here. So 145, and I replace this with light blue. Oh, get rid of the system color. Actually, let me copy that directly here. So let's take a look to our new color. Right, I think this is much prettier. I don't know, you can change the color to whichever you want. But that's for today's video. We accomplished a big part of our of one of the features of the graphical user interface. And in the next video, I want to add the actual moving functionality. So inside this move listener, we are going to implement the mouse down method as well, so that for example, when I double click this, when I single click here, I will be able to move this pawn to d4, for example. And also, I didn't check whether we can select the enemy pieces. So I'm double clicking, but nothing happens. Of course, and whenever I double click the empty cell, nothing happens. So yeah, we'll continue in the next video. See you later.